Wow, what an amazingly busy day. All kinds of things coming out on Twitter about investigations into the Clinton Foundation. A lot of stuff that Charles has been talking about for a long time, seemingly coming to fruition. I just wanted to do a short stream right now. A couple things I needed to let people know about. The debate is tonight, obviously, so what we're going to do is tonight's episode of More Pain, which would normally be playing on Patreon and Subscribestar starting at 8 o'clock. Well, sorry, starts at 8 on YouTube and then continues on Patreon and Subscribestar normally at 8:30, usually goes until about 10. But obviously, people are going to want to watch the presidential debate, want to see if Joe Biden, can make it without having to change his depends every 30 minutes. And if he's able to actually form a sentence. So what we're going to do is we're going to move it to Thursday night. But tonight, I am going to have the first episode of my new show that is going to take viewers deep inside the anti-speech strategy of Robert David Steele. And I think people are going to find this really interesting, because if you've been watching Crowdsource the Truth from the beginning, you're going to remember when Robert David Steele came on the show. I was working with George Webb at the time, and Robert David Steele had all kinds of stuff to say. Shortly after that, he sued me, and that's been going on for 3 years, more than 3 years. A lot of people heard that lawsuit was dismissed the other day. The usual spate of social engineering dopes have put out a bunch of videos saying, I don't know what, they all have something stupid to say all the time. Here at the park, we got the dog run going. It's kind of inclement weather today, but people are still out with the dogs. See dogs barking. It would be interesting if you could know what dogs are thinking. Anyway, I just wanted to let people know about that. I'm a little bit counter-programming myself right now, because right now on the Jason Goodman channel, we've got today's episode of Bishop Gators playing. If you missed that on Crowdsource the Truth 2, it's streamed live earlier on Crowdsource the Truth 2, and it's playing now on the Jason Goodman channel because the president of television, another guy who's suing me, Emmys versus Multimedia System Design, he put a strike on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel because he doesn't like parody. I don't think Robert David Steele likes parody either, but he's going to have an opportunity to enjoy a lot of it. Parody is First Amendment protected free speech, and you're allowed to do it. All these guys who don't like it, it's a little bit of a case of too bad. People are parodying me all the time. Tons of idiots make YouTube channels. Just when I was starting this, I saw somebody had something to say about Bishop Gators. I don't know. Who has all that time? The purpose of doing this show about Robert David Steele is not to taunt him, but to allow people to understand what went on with this thing, because this was an anti-speech strategy. We could call it Operation Ass. Anti-speech strategy. That's just a little code name, Yeah, the dog is thinking, get away from the guy who feeds me. The other thing that's interesting is I was talking to some people. Are we on 25th Street? I was on the walk over here. I was talking to some of the restaurants. They tell me that they're able to open tomorrow, 25% capacity. So I guess that's better than nothing. But boy, I'll tell you, there's a lot of people trying to ruin people's businesses. That's what Robert David Steele, I believe, was trying to do to me. See, these anti-speech lawsuits, they're commonly called SLAPP lawsuits. It's a strategic lawsuit against public participation. Basically means you're bringing the lawsuit because you're just trying to stop somebody from doing something. You don't necessarily even have to win the lawsuit if you can force them to stand down. If somebody can't afford a lawyer, or there's a variety of different things that people can do with these lawsuits to strategically block somebody from doing something. There's a lot of people who have tried to enjoin me from talking about them. You can't really do that. I've learned that's called prior restraint, and that's where you want the court to get somebody to do something or not do something before you've even actually proven the facts of your allegations. There's some interesting things I've learned about lawsuits and getting sued and courts. I mean, by no means am I an attorney. And tonight's show, that's going to start at 8 o'clock on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. It's not like a legal education show. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving people advice. I'm not telling people that they should be pro se or they shouldn't be pro se. I can't help anybody with any cases. I'm just going to share my experiences, let people understand what went on in this thing. And tonight we're going to basically we're just going to go through the whole thing. We're going to start with the complaint. I'm going to tell everybody about who all the different people involved were. If you've been watching for 3 years, if you remember Queen Tut, Susan Holmes, if you remember Patricia Negron, George Webb, of course, Robert David Steele, Cynthia McKinney comes into this whole thing. I think people are going to learn a lot about some of these people, and they're public figures. They're out there on the internet trying to raise money, trying to share information, and they're free to do that, but I think people should know some of the facts about the way these people operate and act, and some of the things that they attempted to do. It's quite interesting, and we're going to look at Robert David Steele's attorney, who is also representing Devin Nunes. This is going to be very interesting to anybody who's represented by Devin Nunes in the state of California. I think you probably are going to be very interested to know what he's doing. He's been suing Twitter. He's been suing various Twitter users. That's another good example. See, Devin Nunes doesn't like what somebody writes about him on Twitter. He seems unable to just turn off Twitter or deal with the fact that he's a congressman doing a lot of stupid stuff, and people are going to criticize that. He's got to sue Twitter. I definitely agree that there are some problems with the laws governing these social media companies and what they can do as far as censorship, but I don't think the solution, particularly not for a congressman, is to sue individuals and corporations. I think he should be working with Josh Hawley and some of the other people in Congress who are trying to introduce new legislation to modernize the Communications Decency Act, Section 230. And, this is going to be an ongoing show. It's not going to just be tonight. I'm going to go over everything in the docket. I'm going to show people how I basically went from being intimidated when this thing first started, which was obviously their goal, and how that affected my thought process, and how I look at these things now. The Emmys is a big company, and they just sued me recently. And I don't know if people are out there who have been sued, you know what I'm talking about, or even if you've been divorced, you get served with legal documents. It's a conflict, it's stressful. And that's what these guys wanted. I think they wanted to put this sort of stress into my life so that I had to spend tons of time and money and effort getting this done. And so I represented myself pro se in this lawsuit. Pro se just means no lawyer. You're showing up on your own behalf, and obviously that saved money. If I had hired a lawyer, I would have gone broke right away. And I think that was their strategy. We're going to see emails between Robert David Steele's attorney and Robert David Steele and some of the other people that were involved. Manuel Chavez, who oddly has decided to re-involve himself. I think that's a very poor idea for Mr. Chavez. There's no upside for him in getting himself involved in this. I think his smartest move would be to just not talk about me and sort of act like he and I don't know each other. Sorry. Now George's brother is going to seize on that. He's been putting out some allegations that somehow I falsified evidence. See, the interesting thing about what these guys are doing is almost all of their claims have been absolutely and totally untrue, made up, unsubstantiated by evidence. Again, people who've been watching for years are going to remember there were a lot of people for a lot of time were accusing me of being a Mossad agent, a CIA agent, all this kind of ridiculous stuff. These claims have been around for 3 years. Not a single piece of evidence has been presented to substantiate any of those claims. I've become really kind of sensitized to this issue of people accusing other people of stuff and not presenting evidence. I mean, that in and of itself, frankly, is lawfare. All this stuff that's been happening to the president is a form of lawfare. And so for people who don't know what lawfare is, perhaps that's the first thing for us to discuss. Lawfare is the weaponization of the legal system, whether civil or criminal, like what's happening to General Flynn, and that's happening today. There was a whole big hearing. Every time he has to go there, he's sitting there under stress. He's got to pay Sidney Powell. I don't know where he travels from, but he's got to come into Washington, D.C., can't do anything else. I mean, forget about the opportunity cost. All this stuff costs money, takes a toll on you. In the case of Michael Flynn, he's lost his home. Tons of pressure on his family. And I mean, look at that, years. He's been going through this for 4 years. I've been dealing with this stupid lawsuit for 3 years before it ended. And it has been stressful. So that's what these guys want to do. And this is not a joke. This is a really serious type of attack. And the people that engage in it are despicable. So people have a right to know about it. You know, the primary allegation from Robert David Steele was that I had defamed him by telling people who had contributed money to his charity, the Earth Intelligence Network, that I had discovered it wasn't registered with the New York State Attorney General. And looking at the statute as it is written in New York State, it appeared that his charity was not in compliance, and so raising money and receiving money from people in New York was technically tax fraud. Because if he's tax exempt and he's not registered with the New York State Attorney General, according to Letitia James, who is the current Attorney General here in New York, she just issued a warning to the Black Lives Matter Foundation in New York, telling them that no charity may solicit in the state of New York without being registered with the Attorney General. And he's still not registered with the Attorney General. Robert David Steele has done a number of things that could qualify as charity fraud if anybody would investigate. I mean, I think what we've been uncovering over the last 3 years is that charity fraud seems to be the favorite crime of white-collar criminals who want to, steal money. Because it doesn't seem like anybody enforces it, whether you're the Clintons or Robert David Steele or whatever it is. And, it's astounding to me the brazen way in which he's ignored these deficiencies with the registration of his charity. So we'll see. I mean, I'm sure he's going to have something to say about what I'm putting out here. A lot of lights going on up there in Times Square. I haven't really been around the city today. It's been really poor weather. It was raining just earlier when I came out. But I wanted to do this quick stream to let people know that More Pain will return on Thursday. Tonight, people can check out the new show, Deep Inside Robert David Steele's Anti-Speech Strategy. I think you're going to find that very interesting. And we're going to learn a lot about how Robert David Steele put this lawsuit together, the ridiculous things that they've pled in the lawsuit, just some of the nuances of how these types of things work in general. And I think people are going to find it really interesting. It's going to reveal a lot about some of the social media personalities who people maybe trust, but are actually liars. There is a vast network of people who are lying to you in social media. And you don't have to believe me. You'll be able to look at the information and come to your own conclusions. I'll see everybody tonight at 8. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to go to crowdsourcethetruth.com. Please support the Counter Lawfare Fund. See, the thing that's happened in the Emmys lawsuit, they've sued my corporation because they know I can't defend the corporation pro se, and perhaps they're now aware that I'm not this sitting duck, easy target. Do you know that these guys, they wanted to ruin me financially. They wanted to make me homeless. They wanted to take my apartment. They wanted to take all my money. They've threatened me with that in phone calls and stupid emails. But what's going to happen now is that I'm going to dedicate as much time as it takes to bring each of these people to justice. And if that means they get investigated for tax fraud, if that means they go to jail for some of the things that they've done, I will be delighted by that. And I'm going to spend a considerable amount of energy doing what I can from a legal standpoint to make it happen. I'll see everybody at 8 o'clock. Please become a sponsor at patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. That's going to be the only place you're going to be able to see this investigation deep inside Robert David Steele's anti-speech strategy. And the reason I'm doing that is because I've literally spent thousands of dollars, traveled to Virginia, tons of FedExes back and forth, laser printer, car rental, hotel, various fees for transcripts. We're going to go over the transcripts from all the hearings. This is going to be super interesting for lawyers, for law students, for people who are interested in the law, for people who are interested in social media, for people who are fans of Crowdsource the Truth, for people who are fans of Robert David Steele. If you doubt what I'm saying, this is stuff that's available on Pacer. You're going to be able to see all the filings, read them yourself, come to your own conclusions. I look forward to seeing everybody tonight at 8 on Patreon and Subscribestar. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.